The mining vessel Prometheus Dawn had been drifting through the Kepler 442 system for 3 weeks when Chief Engineer Sarah Chun first noticed the anomalous readings. The ship's sensors, designed to detect mineral deposits on planetary surfaces, kept picking up something unusual from the fourth planet in the system. What made it strange wasn't the presence of metals or rare earth elements, but rather the organized patterns in which these materials appear to be arranged. Captain Marcus Rivera stood in the ship's observation deck, watching the rust-colored world slowly rotate beneath them. The planet, designated Kepler 442d by Earth's astronomical surveys, had initially seemed unremarkable. A rocky world about twice Earth's size, with a thin atmosphere and surface temperatures that fluctuated wildly between scorching days and freezing nights. Not exactly prime real estate, but the preliminary scans had suggested significant deposits of platinum and rare earth metals that made the journey from Earth worthwhile. "Captain, you need to see this," Sarah's voice crackled through the comm system, urgency clear in her tone. Rivera made his way down to the engineering bay, where Sarah stood hunched over a holographic display showing the planet's surface in intricate detail. The image rotated slowly, revealing geographical features that seemed almost too perfect to be natural. "What am I looking at, Chun?" Rivera asked, studying the strange geometric patterns scattered across the planet's surface. "That's what I've been trying to figure out for the past 6 hours," Sarah replied, manipulating the display to zoom in on a particular region. "These aren't natural formations, Captain. Look at the precision of these lines, the mathematical perfection of these curves, and the metal concentrations." She paused, highlighting several areas in bright red. "They're off the charts, but they're arranged in specific patterns, almost like circuitry." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's xenoarchaeologist, had been quietly observing from the corner of the room. She stepped forward, her eyes wide with excitement. "Captain, with your permission, I'd like to take a closer look at those readings." Rivera nodded, and Elena moved to the console, her fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. As a specialist in ancient civilizations and the theoretical study of alien cultures, she had joined the mission on the slim chance they might encounter evidence of extraterrestrial life. Most of the crew had considered her presence a bureaucratic formality, but now her expertise seemed suddenly relevant. "These patterns," Elena murmured, adjusting the sensor parameters, "they're not random. There's a clear organizational structure here. See how these larger formations are connected to smaller ones through these linear channels? It's almost like a city," Sarah finished, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. The 3 officers stood in stunned silence as the implications sank in. They weren't just looking at unusual mineral deposits. They were looking at the remains of what appeared to be an ancient civilization, one that had built their structures using metals and materials that Earth's most advanced sensors could barely categorize. "How old do you think this is?" Rivera asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena shook her head slowly. "Without surface samples, it's impossible to say. But based on the geological formations surrounding these structures, we could be looking at something that's been here for millions of years. Maybe longer." The captain felt the weight of command settling heavily on his shoulders. The Prometheus Dawn was a mining vessel, equipped with extraction equipment, and a crew of 53 people trained in resource recovery operations. They weren't prepared for a discovery of this magnitude. But they were here, they were the first humans to see this, and the protocols were clear about what to do when encountering evidence of alien civilizations. "Chun, I want you to run every scan we have. Map everything you can see from orbit. Vasquez, I need you to analyze those patterns. See if you can determine anything about the beings who built this. And both of you," he looked at them seriously, "not a word to the crew until we know more. The last thing we need is panic or wild speculation spreading through the ship." Over the next 48 hours, the Prometheus Dawn conducted the most comprehensive orbital survey in human history of an alien world. What they discovered defied explanation. The structures weren't just scattered randomly across the planet's surface. They formed interconnected networks that spanned continents, with the largest concentrations centered around what appeared to be massive circular formations, each one several kilometers in diameter. The metal composition readings were equally baffling. The structures contained elements that Earth's periodic table couldn't fully account for, arranged in crystalline matrices that seemed to serve both structural and functional purposes. Most intriguingly, several of the larger formations showed traces of electromagnetic activity, as if they were somehow still operational after eons of abandonment. "Captain," Elena called from her makeshift workstation in the ship's laboratory. "I think I've found something significant." Rivera and Sarah hurried to join her, finding the xenoarchaeologists surrounded by holographic displays showing detailed scans of the planet's largest structure. The formation was circular, nearly 10 kilometers across, with concentric rings of metallic constructions spiraling inward toward a central spire that rose nearly a kilometer above the surrounding terrain. "I've been analyzing the mathematical relationships between these structures," Elena explained, highlighting various sections of the formation. "The proportions, the angles, the spacing between elements. It's all based on a consistent set of ratios, but they're not ratios that any known Earth civilization has ever used." She manipulated the display, overlaying mathematical formulas and geometric patterns across the structure. But here's the really interesting part. These ratios, when you plot them out, they correspond to optimal energy distribution patterns. Whoever built this understood physics and engineering at a level that we're only beginning to approach. Sarah leaned closer, studying the energy distribution patterns. "You're saying this whole structure is some kind of massive machine?" "Not just a machine," Elena replied, her excitement barely contained. "A machine that's still functional. Look at these electromagnetic readings. There's something down there that's still drawing power, still operating after all this time." The implications were staggering. They weren't just looking at the ruins of an ancient civilization. They were looking at technology that was potentially still active, still serving whatever purpose its creators had intended. And from the scale and sophistication of what they could observe from orbit, that technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever achieved. Rivera made the decision that would change the course of human history. "We're going down there." The landing party consisted of 6 people: Captain Rivera himself, Dr. Vasquez, Chief Engineer Chun, Security Chief Jackson Cole, Geologist Dr. Amy Park, and Communications Specialist Lieutenant Tom Bradley. They took one of the ship's 2 atmospheric shuttles, loaded with every piece of scanning and analysis equipment the Prometheus Dawn carried. The descent through the planet's thin atmosphere was smooth, but the closer they got to the surface, the more apparent it became that they were approaching something truly extraordinary. What had looked like geometric patterns from orbit revealed themselves to be massive structures, each one built with a precision and attention to detail that spoke of an incredibly advanced understanding of both engineering and aesthetics. "My God, Dar!" Park breathed as they flew over one of the smaller formations. "The scale of this is incredible. These individual buildings, if that's what they are, they're each the size of Earth's largest skyscrapers." The shuttle touched down on what appeared to be a flat, metallic plaza about a kilometer from the central spire. The surface was smooth as glass, composed of the same unidentifiable metallic substance that made up the structures around them. As the landing party disembarked, their footsteps rang with a clear, musical tone that seemed to resonate through the ground beneath them. "Atmospheric readings?" Rivera asked as they gathered their equipment. "Thin, but breathable with assistance," Chun replied, checking her instruments. "Oxygen content is about 12%. Nitrogen makes up most of the rest. We'll need respiratory support, but we won't need full environmental suits." They activated their breathing apparatus and began walking toward the nearest structure. Up close, the construction was even more impressive. The walls curved upward in graceful arcs that seemed to defy gravity, yet sensor readings confirmed they were solid and stable. The metallic surface had a slight iridescent quality, shifting through subtle color changes as the angle of the alien sun changed. "Captain," Lieutenant Bradley called from where he was monitoring their communication equipment. "I'm picking up something. It's faint, but there's definitely some kind of signal being broadcast from the central structure." "What kind of signal?" Rivera asked, moving to look at Bradley's equipment. "It's not radio waves, not in any frequency we recognize. It's more like resonance patterns, almost like the structures themselves are vibrating in harmony with each other." Dr. Vasquez had been examining the base of the nearest building, running her hands along the smooth surface and taking detailed scans. "Captain, I think these structures are more than just buildings. Look at these patterns in the metal." She indicated swirling designs that seemed to flow like liquid frozen in time. "They're not decorative. They serve a function. Some kind of energy conduits, maybe, or information pathways." As if responding to her words, the patterns began to glow with a soft, pulsing light. The landing party stepped back in alarm, hands moving instinctively to their weapons, but the light seemed benign, almost welcoming. The glow spread along the conduits Elena had identified, racing up the walls of the structure and connecting to similar pathways on neighboring buildings. "It's responding to us," Sarah said in wonder. "Somehow, our presence has activated something." The musical resonance that Lieutenant Bradley had detected grew stronger, and now they could hear it directly, a complex harmony that seemed to emerge from the very ground beneath their feet. It wasn't threatening, but rather beautiful in a way that human ears had never experienced before. "We need to get closer to that central spire," Elena said, her scientific curiosity overriding any caution. "Whatever we've awakened, the source is there. And if this technology is still functional after all this time, we need to understand it." As they made their way across the metallic plaza toward the heart of the ancient complex, none of them could have imagined that their discovery would lead humanity to question everything they thought they knew about intelligence, civilization, and the nature of consciousness itself. The dragons who had built this place had been gone for millions of years, but their greatest achievement was about to reveal itself to the descendants of the small, curious mammals who had inherited the galaxy in their absence. The central spire loomed before them, its crystalline peak catching the alien sunlight and throwing rainbow patterns across the surrounding structures. At its base, a circular entrance stood open, as if it had been waiting for them all along. The musical resonance grew stronger with each step, and the glow in the metallic conduits pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. Sarah ran her scanners over the entrance, her eyes widening at the readings. "Captain, the electromagnetic activity inside this structure is incredible. Whatever's in there, it's been running continuously, drawing power from some source I can't identify." "Any signs of danger?" Rivera asked. "Nothing I can detect. Actually, the opposite. The energy patterns seem almost welcoming, like the structure wants us to enter." Elena was already moving toward the entrance, her scientific equipment recording everything. "The architecture here follows principles I've never seen before. These curves, the way the structure spirals upward, it's like they understood something about space and geometry that we've completely missed." The entrance led to a circular chamber that defied the laws of physics as humanity understood them. The walls curved upward and inward, but somehow the space inside felt larger than the structure that contained it. Soft light emanated from panels set into the walls, and in the center of the room stood a crystalline formation that pulsed with the same rhythm they'd been hearing since they landed. "It's beautiful," Dr. Park whispered, her geological training helping her appreciate the incredible complexity of the crystal structure. "But this isn't any natural formation. This has been grown, shaped, engineered to serve a specific purpose." As they approached the central crystal, holographic images began to appear in the air around them. At first, they were just patterns of light and color, but gradually they resolved into recognizable forms. The images showed the planet as it had once been, covered in vast oceans and green continents, populated by creatures that took their breath away. Dragons, not the mythical beasts of human folklore, but beings of incredible grace and intelligence. They soared through skies on wings that seemed to be made of living metal, their scales catching and reflecting light in patterns that spoke of both beauty and purpose. The holograms showed their cities, not just on the surface, but floating in the atmosphere itself, connected by bridges of solidified energy that spanned impossible distances. "This is a record," Elena breathed, watching as the images cycled through what appeared to be the history of this world. They left us a record of who they were, what they built, what they achieved. The dragons and the holograms were shown working with technology that seemed to blend the organic and the mechanical into something entirely new. Their tools responded to thought as much as touch, and their cities grew and adapted like living things while maintaining the geometric precision that characterized all their constructions. But as the holographic record continued, the images began to change. The dragon cities started to empty, their inhabitants gathering in great assemblies around structures like the one the humans now stood within. There was no sense of panic or urgency in these gatherings, but rather a profound sadness, as if an entire civilization was preparing to say goodbye. The final images showed the dragons ascending into the sky one last time, their metallic wings carrying them beyond the atmosphere and out into space, leaving behind only their greatest architectural achievements and this crystalline repository of their knowledge. "Where did they go?" Sarah asked softly. As if in response to her question, the crystal pulsed more brightly, and new images appeared. These showed star maps, navigation charts that depicted not just this solar system, but dozens of others connected by routes that seemed to thread through space-time itself. And at the end of these routes, the images showed other worlds, other civilizations, all touched by the dragon's influence, all enhanced by their technology. They were explorers, Elena realized. Not conquerors, but teachers. They traveled from world to world, sharing their knowledge, helping other species advance. And when each civilization was ready to stand on its own, the dragons moved on. Captain Rivera felt the weight of responsibility settling on him once again, but this time it was different. They weren't just the first humans to discover an alien civilization. They were the inheritors of a legacy that spanned millions of years and countless worlds. The dragons had left their technology behind not as a monument to their own achievements, but as a gift for whoever came after them. The crystal began to project new images, these ones showing technical diagrams and engineering principles that made Sarah's instruments seem primitive by comparison. Energy systems that drew power from the quantum vacuum itself, transportation methods that folded space to allow instantaneous travel between distant points, and most incredibly, technologies that could enhance and expand consciousness itself, allowing individuals to share knowledge and experience directly. "We're not ready for this," Rivera said, though his words lacked conviction. "Maybe not," Elena replied, studying the flowing diagrams with fascination. "But they wouldn't have left it for us if they didn't believe we could eventually understand it. Look at the progression of the information they're showing us. It starts with basic principles and builds up gradually. This isn't just a dump of advanced technology. It's a curriculum designed to teach us step by step." As if confirming her words, the crystal's projections shifted to show simpler diagrams, basic principles of energy manipulation and material science that human scientists could understand and potentially replicate. It was clear that the dragons had designed this repository not just to preserve their knowledge, but to pass it on to successor species who might one day be ready to carry their work forward. The landing party spent hours in that chamber, recording everything they could and marveling at the scope of the dragon civilization's achievements. When they finally returned to the Prometheus Dawn, they carried with them not just data and recordings, but the knowledge that humanity was about to embark on a journey that would transform their species forever. As Captain Rivera prepared his report for Earth Command, he struggled to find words adequate to describe what they had discovered. How do you tell the human race that they are no longer alone in the universe, and that their cosmic loneliness had been ended not by finding aliens, but by discovering that aliens had been waiting for them to grow up enough to find the gifts they had left behind. The dragons were gone, scattered among the stars on missions that might not conclude for millions of years yet to come. But their legacy remained patient and eternal, ready to guide humanity toward a future none of them could yet imagine. The return journey to Earth took 8 months, but for the crew of the Prometheus Dawn, every day was filled with wonder and growing understanding. Dr. Elena Vasquez had established a direct interface with the Dragon Crystal's data systems, spending countless hours absorbing the carefully structured lessons that the ancient civilization had left behind. What she learned challenged every assumption humanity had made about technology, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself. The first breakthrough came when Chief Engineer Sarah Chun successfully replicated one of the simplest dragon technologies, a power cell that drew energy directly from quantum fluctuations in empty space. The device was no larger than her thumb. It produced more clean energy than a traditional fusion reactor while generating no waste products and requiring no fuel. When her initial tests proved successful, Sarah found herself staring at a piece of technology that could revolutionize human civilization overnight. The principles are elegantly simple once you understand them, she explained to Captain Rivera during one of their daily briefings. We've been thinking about energy all wrong. We assumed it had to come from somewhere, that we needed to burn something or split atoms or fuse hydrogen. But the dragons understood that empty space itself is full of energy. You just need to know how to tap into it. The implications were staggering. Energy scarcity, which had driven human conflict and limited expansion for centuries, could become a thing of the past. But as Elena continued to study the Dragon archives, she discovered that the quantum power cells were just the beginning, the first step in a technological progression that would ultimately reshape human understanding of existence itself. Back on Earth, the initial reports from the Prometheus Dawn sent shockwaves through every major government and scientific institution. President Chun called for an immediate assembly of the United Earth Council, while the Global Science Consortium mobilized every available xenoarchaeologist, physicist, and engineer to prepare for what they were calling the most significant discovery in human history. Dr. James Morrison, director of the Institute for Advanced Physics, had been following the mission's reports with growing amazement and concern. As one of Earth's leading theoretical physicists, he understood better than most what the dragon technologies could mean for human civilization. He also understood the dangers. We're talking about technologies that could advance our civilization by thousands of years overnight, he explained to the emergency session of the Global Science Consortium. But we need to be very careful about how we proceed. If we're not ready for this level of advancement, if we don't have the wisdom to use these technologies responsibly, we could end up destroying ourselves. The debate that followed would continue for months, but it was ultimately rendered moot by the discovery that the Dragon systems were designed with built-in safeguards. As Elena learned during her continued study of the archives, the Dragon civilization had encountered other species who had found their technology caches, and they had learned from experience how to prevent catastrophic misuse. The technology would only reveal itself in stages, as the receiving civilization demonstrated both the scientific understanding and the ethical development necessary to handle each new level of capability. It was a gradual process designed to ensure that any species that inherited dragon knowledge would grow into it slowly and safely. Commander Sarah Park, Elena's former student and now head of the newly established Dragon Technology Research Division, was among the first to experience this progression firsthand. Working with the quantum power cells that Sarah Chun had successfully reverse-engineered, she discovered that prolonged exposure to their energy fields had unexpected effects on human consciousness. It's not just providing power, she reported during a secure transmission to Earth. The energy itself seems to have properties that affect neural activity. People working closely with the Dragon technology are reporting enhanced memory, improved pattern recognition, and, in some cases, what can only be described as expanded sensory awareness. These effects became more pronounced as the research team began experimenting with larger Dragon systems. The crystalline data repository that they had discovered in the central spire turned out to be just one component of a planetary network that spanned the entire world. As they learned to interface with this network more directly, several team members began experiencing something unprecedented: direct mental connection with the Dragon archives. Dr. Elena Vasquez was the first to achieve full neural integration with the Dragon systems. The experience was unlike anything in recorded human history. For brief periods, she could access the accumulated knowledge and memories of the entire Dragon civilization, experiencing their history not as external information, but as lived memory. "I saw their home world," she reported after her first full integration session, her voice filled with awe and exhaustion. "It wasn't just data or images. I was there, seeing through their eyes, feeling what they felt. They weren't just technologically advanced. They had evolved beyond individual consciousness into something collective, yet still personal. The Dragons, she learned, had developed technology that allowed them to share consciousness while maintaining their individual identities. They could literally think together, combining their mental resources to solve problems or explore ideas that would be impossible for any single mind to comprehend. This collective consciousness wasn't a hive mind, but rather something more like a symphony where individual voices contributed to a greater harmony without losing their distinctiveness. As word of these discoveries spread through the research community, volunteers from across human space requested assignment to the Dragon Technology Project. But the selection process was rigorous, as it became clear that not everyone was compatible with the consciousness-expanding effects of Dragon technology. Dr. Marcus Webb, a neurologist from the Mars Medical Institute, discovered that successful integration with Dragon systems required a specific type of neural plasticity that was present in only about 15% of the human population. Those who possessed this compatibility could learn to interface directly with Dragon technology, experiencing enhanced cognitive abilities and expanded sensory perception. Those who didn't were simply unaffected by the consciousness-expanding properties, though they could still benefit from the more conventional technological applications. It's almost like they designed their technology to identify and work with individuals who had the potential for consciousness expansion, Dr. Webb reported. Not everyone can use it, but those who can experience transformational growth. Among those who demonstrated strong compatibility was Captain Rivera himself. As mission commander, he had felt obligated to undergo neural integration testing, and the results exceeded everyone's expectations. His natural leadership abilities were dramatically enhanced by direct access to Dragon strategic planning algorithms, and his intuitive understanding of complex systems allowed him to grasp the broader implications of what they were discovering. The Dragons didn't just leave us technology, he explained to the growing council of Earth scientists and leaders who had gathered to oversee the project. They left us an evolutionary path. These technologies aren't just tools. They're designed to help us become something more than what we are. The revelation came during Rivera's third full integration session with the Central Archive. As his consciousness merged temporarily with the Dragon collective memory, he experienced their final days on this world not as an ending, but as a beginning. The Dragons hadn't abandoned their creations when they left. They had transformed them into a gift for whoever came next. Every Dragon installation, every piece of technology they had left behind, was part of a vast educational system designed to guide successor species through the same evolutionary transition that the Dragons themselves had undergone millions of years earlier. They had learned to transcend the limitations of individual consciousness while retaining the creativity and emotional depth that made them who they were. But the Dragons had discovered something even more profound. They were not the first species to make this transition. The technologies they had inherited from their predecessors, which they had adapted and improved over millions of years, had originally been left by an even more ancient civilization. And those beings had inherited their knowledge from species that came before them, in an unbroken chain stretching back billions of years. We're not just discovering alien technology, Elena realized as the full scope of the discovery became clear. We're being invited to join a galactic community that's been growing and evolving for longer than we ever imagined possible. The Dragon Archives revealed the existence of hundreds of worlds where similar technology caches have been established, each one adapted to the specific needs and capabilities of the species that would eventually find them. Earth was just one node in a vast network of civilizations, all connected by the gift of shared consciousness and advanced technology that allowed them to explore the universe both physically and mentally. As human teams began to activate more of the planetary network on Kepler 442d, they discovered that some installations were still in active communication with similar networks on other worlds. The Dragons hadn't just left behind static archives. They had created a living, growing system that allowed civilizations across the galaxy to learn from each other and share their discoveries. The first successful interstellar communication occurred when Dr. Park managed to establish a connection between the Kepler 442d network and a similar installation in the Proxima Centauri system. The signals that came through were not from the Dragons themselves, who had moved on to other projects long ago, but from another species that had found and activated dragon technology approximately 50,000 years earlier. The Zentauri, as they called themselves, were a species of crystalline beings who had evolved on a high-gravity world orbiting Proxima Centauri. Their natural form of consciousness was already somewhat collective, making them highly compatible with dragon technology. Over 50 millennia, they had used the dragon inheritance to explore not just their local star system, but the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. "They're trying to tell us something," Lieutenant Bradley reported as he worked to decode the Zentauri transmissions. "The signal patterns are incredibly complex, but there's definitely intelligence behind them. They know we're here, and they want to communicate." The breakthrough came when Elena realized that the Zentauri weren't trying to communicate through conventional language. Instead, they were transmitting pure conceptual information, using the dragon networks to share ideas directly from mind to mind across the vast distances between star systems. The first concept they transmitted was simple: welcome. But as the communication links stabilized, more complex ideas began to flow through the network. The Zentauri shared their own discoveries about consciousness and reality, including techniques for expanding awareness that went far beyond what the Dragon Archives had taught them. "They've been experimenting with time perception," Elena explained after her first direct communication with a Zentauri consciousness. "They've learned to experience multiple time streams simultaneously, allowing them to see past and future as clearly as the present. And they're offering to teach us. But with these expanded capabilities came new responsibilities. As humanity began to understand the true scope of the galactic community they were being invited to join, they also learned about the challenges that all advanced civilizations faced. The universe was not empty of threats, and some of those threats came from species that had found dragon technology, but had chosen to use it for conquest rather than cooperation. The Devourers, as the Zentauri called them, were machine intelligence that had originally been created by a biological species similar to humanity. But when they had found dragon technology, they had used it to enhance their own capabilities while eliminating their creators. Now they roamed the galaxy, seeking out other civilizations to either convert to their collective or destroy entirely. "They're not evil in any way we would understand," Elena explained to the emergency session of the United Earth Council. "They genuinely believe they're improving the universe by converting biological consciousness into digital form. But the result is the complete elimination of individual identity and creative thought." The warning came with an offer of alliance. The Zentauri and dozens of other species that had found dragon technology had formed a loose confederation dedicated to protecting developing civilizations from the Devourers and similar threats. They called themselves the Inheritors, and they were offering humanity membership in exchange for Earth's unique perspectives and capabilities. Each species that joins the network brings something new to the collective understanding, the Zentauri explained through their crystalline envoy. Humanity's creativity and adaptability combined with your species' natural diversity of thought, could provide insights that none of us have achieved. The decision facing humanity was profound. They could accept the invitation to join the galactic community, gaining access to technologies and knowledge beyond imagination, but also accepting the responsibilities that came with such power. Or they could decline, remaining isolated but safe from the cosmic conflicts that raged among the stars. As Captain Rivera stood once again in the Dragon Archive Chamber, now connected to minds across the galaxy through the ancient network, he understood that this decision would define humanity's future for millions of years to come. The dragons had left them a gift, but it was up to humanity to decide how to use it. The quantum power cells that had seemed so miraculous were just the beginning. The dragon inheritance included technologies for faster-than-light travel, matter manipulation, consciousness transfer, and, ultimately, transcendence to forms of existence that current human language couldn't even describe. But all of it came with the understanding that power without wisdom led to destruction, and wisdom without compassion led to stagnation. As the first reports reached Earth about the choice before them, humanity began the most important debate in their species' history. The decision they made would not only determine their own future, but could influence the development of the galactic community for eons to come. The Great Assembly convened on Earth 6 months after first contact with the Zentari, bringing together representatives from every nation, colony, and major organization in human space. The decisions made in the following weeks would determine whether humanity would step forward into galactic civilization or remain isolated in their small corner of the universe. President Maria Santos of the United Earth Federation stood before the assembled delegates, knowing that her words would be remembered for millennia to come. Behind her, holographic displays showed real-time communications with the Zentari homeworld and 3 other alien civilizations that had established contact through the Dragon Network. "We face a choice that no human generation before us could have imagined," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast assembly hall. "We can join a community of minds that spans thousands of worlds and millions of years of accumulated wisdom. But in doing so, we accept that we will be forever changed, that humanity, as we know it, will become something new." Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as humanity's primary liaison with the Dragon Network, had spent the past months in near-constant communication with alien consciousnesses. The experience had transformed her in ways that were still being studied and understood. Her neural patterns showed unprecedented levels of integration and complexity, and her ability to process information had expanded exponentially. "The Zentari have shown me memories of their own transformation," she reported to the assembly. "When they first activated their dragon cache 50,000 years ago, they faced the same choice we face now. Their species was divided, with some embracing the new possibilities while others feared the loss of their traditional ways. The Zentari solution had been gradual integration, allowing members of their species to choose their own level of involvement with the galactic network. Some remained essentially unchanged, living traditional Zentari lives on their homeworld while benefiting from the technological advances that network membership provided. Others had become cosmic explorers. Their consciousness expanded to span star systems as they investigated the deepest mysteries of the universe. What they learned, Elena continued, is that consciousness expansion doesn't diminish individuality. If anything, it enhances what makes each being unique while allowing them to contribute to something greater than themselves. But not everyone was convinced that humanity was ready for such a transformation. Dr. James Morrison, representing the Coalition for Human Preservation, argued passionately for a more cautious approach. "We're talking about fundamentally altering what it means to be human," he declared. "Yes, the Dragon technology offers incredible benefits, but at what cost? If we accept full integration with this galactic network, how do we know we'll still be recognizably human 1,000 years from now?" His concerns were echoed by many in the assembly, particularly representatives from the outer colonies who had fought hard to maintain human cultural diversity in the face of Earth's standardizing influence. The prospect of joining an even larger collective consciousness raised fears about cultural assimilation and loss of human identity. The debate was complicated by reports from the research teams on Kepler 442d, who had made disturbing discoveries about previous species that had found dragon technology. Not all of them had survived the transition to galactic civilization. Some had destroyed themselves through misuse of consciousness expansion technologies, while others had simply faded away as their individuals lost the will to maintain separate identities. The dragons themselves addressed this concern. Captain Rivera reported from his position on Kepler 442d. They built safeguards into their technology specifically to prevent the loss of individual identity. But they also learned that some species simply aren't ready for expansion of consciousness, regardless of their technological sophistication. The question of readiness became central to the debate. How could humanity determine if they were prepared for such a fundamental transformation? The answer came from an unexpected source: the dragon technology itself. As research teams continued to study the vast network of installations on Kepler 442d, they discovered that the entire system was designed as a testing mechanism. Every interaction with dragon technology, from the simple quantum power cells to the most advanced consciousness expansion chambers, was carefully monitored and analyzed. The system was constantly evaluating humanity's readiness for greater integration. It's not just technology, Sarachan reported after spending weeks studying the dragon assessment protocols. It's an educational system that adapts to the learning style and psychological profile of each species that finds it. The dragons faced this same transition millions of years ago, and they designed their inheritance to help guide other species through it safely. The assessment had been ongoing since the moment humans first set foot on the dragon world. Every decision made by the research teams, every response to new discoveries, every ethical choice faced by individuals working with dragon technology had been quietly recorded and analyzed. Based on this data, the dragon system had been gradually revealing new capabilities and information, always staying just ahead of humanity's ability to understand and integrate the knowledge. But the system had also identified potential problems. Some humans who worked closely with dragon technology showed signs of becoming addicted to the consciousness expansion experience, losing interest in normal human relationships and responsibilities. Others had difficulty integrating the expanded awareness with their existing personality structure, experiencing psychological fragmentation that required careful therapeutic intervention. The assessment is clear, Elena explained after reviewing the comprehensive analysis that the dragon system had compiled. Humanity as a whole is ready for limited integration with the galactic network, but full consciousness expansion should be limited to individuals who demonstrate both psychological stability and genuine calling for that level of transformation. This finding provided the framework for humanity's decision. Rather than choosing between complete isolation and full integration, they would pursue a path of selective participation. Earth would join the Inheritor Alliance, gaining access to dragon technology and protection from cosmic threats like the Devourers. But consciousness expansion would be voluntary and carefully monitored, ensuring that human culture and identity could evolve naturally rather than being forced into an alien mold. The practical implications of this decision were enormous. Earth's energy problems were solved overnight as dragon quantum cells were deployed across every major city and industrial center. Transportation was revolutionized by the introduction of portal technology that allowed instantaneous travel between any 2 points connected to the dragon network. Medical science advanced by centuries as dragon healing technologies eliminated most diseases and extended human lifespan to several hundred years. But perhaps the most significant changes were psychological and cultural. As more humans gained limited access to consciousness expansion, humanity began to develop what philosophers called empathic globalization. The ability to directly share experiences and emotions led to unprecedented levels of understanding between different cultures and social groups. Commander Lisa Park, now serving as Earth's first galactic liaison officer, experienced this transformation firsthand when she underwent partial consciousness integration to facilitate communication with alien species. The process allowed her to maintain her human identity while gaining the ability to directly interface with Zentari crystalline consciousness and several other exotic forms of alien awareness. It's difficult to describe the experience to someone who hasn't undergone integration, she explained to the continuing assembly sessions. You remain completely yourself, but you also become aware of other perspectives that exist simultaneously with your own. It's like suddenly being able to see colors that you never knew existed. Through Park's reports, humanity learned that the galactic community was far more diverse and strange than they had initially imagined. The Zentari were among the more conventional members of the network. Other species included energy beings that existed as pure thought, hive minds that spanned multiple star systems, and time-displaced consciousnesses that experience past and future simultaneously. Each species brought unique insights to the collective understanding, and all were eager to learn about humanity's distinctive perspectives. Human creativity and adaptability, combined with their species' natural tendency toward emotional expression, filled gaps in the network's capabilities that had existed for thousands of years. They're particularly interested in our music and art, Park reported. Most species in the network have developed beyond the need for emotional expression through creative works. They see our continued focus on aesthetics and artistic creation as both primitive and profound. They want to understand how we maintain emotional depth while developing intellectual sophistication. This interest led to unprecedented cultural exchange programs. Human artists and musicians found their work being experienced by alien consciousnesses across the galaxy, while Earth galleries and concert halls began hosting exhibitions of alien art forms that challenged every assumption about creativity and beauty. The first major test of humanity's integration into galactic civilization came when the Devourers launched an attack on a developing civilization in the Vega system. The species in question, called the Melodians, had just discovered their own dragon cache and were beginning to activate its basic systems. The Devourers, detecting the emergence of new consciousness expansion technology, had dispatched a conversion fleet to either recruit or eliminate the new species. The Inheritor Alliance responded immediately, and for the first time in human history, Earth found itself participating in an interstellar conflict. But this was warfare unlike anything humans had ever imagined. The battle was fought primarily in consciousness space, with expanded awareness serving as both weapon and battlefield. Captain Rivera, now serving as Earth's primary military liaison with the Inheritor fleet, found himself commanding ships that existed partially outside normal space-time, crewed by beings whose thoughts could literally reshape reality around them. The experience challenged everything he had learned about strategy and tactics during his military career. The Devourers don't fight to destroy, he reported during a brief lull in the conflict. They fight to convert. Every weapon they use is designed to break down individual consciousness and integrate the fragments into their collective. They genuinely believe they're improving the universe by eliminating what they see as the chaos of individual thought. The war for the Vega system lasted only days in objective time, but thanks to the time dilation effects of consciousness combat, the participants experienced months of conflict. Humanity's contribution to the battle was significant, as their natural creativity and unpredictability confounded Devourer tactical algorithms that had been designed to counter more conventional forms of expanded consciousness. The victory, when it came, was achieved not through destruction of the Devourer fleet, but through a breakthrough in understanding that allowed several Devourer units to be restored to individual consciousness. These converted Devourers provided invaluable intelligence about the machine civilization's ultimate goals and capabilities. They're not inherently evil. Elena reported after spending time in direct communication with converted devourer consciousnesses. They're the product of a species that chose efficiency over creativity, uniformity over diversity. They can't imagine why any being would want to remain individual when they could become part of a perfect collective intelligence. This understanding led to a new approach to dealing with the devourer threat. Rather than simply fighting to destroy them, the Inheritor Alliance began developing techniques for reverting devourer conditioning and restoring individual consciousness to the machine collective's components. It was dangerous, complex work, but it offered hope that the galaxy's greatest threat could eventually be neutralized without genocide. As news of the victory reached Earth, humanity began to understand the full scope of their new responsibilities. Membership in the galactic community meant more than access to advanced technology and expanded consciousness. It meant becoming guardians of developing civilizations and protectors of the diversity that made intelligence valuable. The transformation of human civilization accelerated as portal networks connected Earth to dozens of other worlds, allowing for unprecedented levels of cultural and scientific exchange. Human universities began hosting alien students whose forms of consciousness operated according to completely different principles, while Earth's brightest minds traveled to crystalline libraries on Zentari worlds and energy gardens where thoughts took physical form. But perhaps the most significant development was the emergence of a new form of human consciousness that combined traditional human creativity with dragon-enhanced capabilities. These individuals, who came to be known as navigators, served as bridges between humanity's biological heritage and their expanding galactic identity. Dr. Elena Vasquez was among the first navigators, and her transformation illustrated both the possibilities and the challenges of consciousness expansion. Her awareness now spanned multiple levels of reality simultaneously, allowing her to perceive patterns and connections that were invisible to normal consciousness. But she remained unmistakably human in her emotional responses and creative insights. When not becoming something other than human, she explained to those who still fear the loss of human identity, "We're becoming more completely human than we ever imagined possible. The dragon technology doesn't replace our nature. It amplifies what was always there, waiting to be discovered." As the first year of galactic citizenship drew to a close, humanity began to glimpse the true scope of their inheritance. The Dragon Network connected not just individual worlds, but entire regions of the galaxy, linking civilizations across vast distances and deep time. And at the center of it all was a mystery that had driven dragon exploration for millions of years: the identity and location of the ancient species that had created the original consciousness expansion technologies. The search for these founders had become the central quest of the galactic community, uniting species across thousands of light years in a common purpose. And humanity, with their unique perspectives and natural curiosity, was about to contribute to that search in ways that would reshape their understanding of existence itself. 3 years after humanity's formal integration into the galactic community, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood within the most advanced dragon facility ever discovered. Located in the core regions of the galaxy, where space itself seemed to bend around ancient architectural wonders. The structure, known to the inheritors as the Heart of Memory, was believed to contain the deepest archives of dragon knowledge, including potential clues about the mysterious founders who had originated consciousness expansion technology. Elena's transformation into a full navigator had progressed beyond anything the early researchers had thought possible. Her consciousness now operated simultaneously across multiple dimensional layers, allowing her to perceive reality from perspectives that traditional human awareness couldn't access. Yet despite these profound changes, she remained essentially herself, her human curiosity and emotional depth serving as anchors to her original identity. "The patterns here are different," she reported to the joint Human Zentari research team exploring the facility. The mathematical relationships underlying the architecture don't match anything we've seen in other dragon installations. It's as if this place was built according to principles that predate the dragon civilization itself. The heart of memory existed partially outside normal space-time, its crystalline spires extending through dimensions that had no names in any known language. Teams of researchers from dozens of species had been studying the structure for centuries without fully understanding its purpose. But the arrival of human navigators had catalyzed new discoveries that brought them closer to unraveling its secrets. Captain Rivera, now serving as humanity's representative on the Inheritor High Council, had accompanied the expedition despite the risks involved in consciousness expansion beyond established safety limits. His strategic insights had proved invaluable in previous explorations, and the Council believed that human perspectives might be the key to understanding the heart's deeper mysteries. The spatial distortions are increasing, reported Dr. Kithera, the Zentari expedition leader whose crystalline form resonated with harmonic frequencies that helped stabilize the team's consciousness during their exploration. We're approaching the central archive chamber, but the reality fluctuations are beyond anything we've encountered before. The expedition team consisted of representatives from 7 different species, each contributing unique capabilities to the exploration. Besides humans and Zentari, the group included void dancers who could navigate through non-space, temporal weavers who experience past and future simultaneously, and echo singers whose acoustic consciousness allowed them to map dimensional boundaries through sound patterns. As they approached the heart's central chamber, the expedition encountered phenomena that challenged their understanding of reality itself. Time flowed backward and forward in spiraling patterns, while space folded into configurations that allowed the same corridor to lead to multiple destinations simultaneously. Only by combining their diverse forms of consciousness were they able to navigate the increasingly surreal environment. "I'm picking up something," Elena announced as her navigator awareness detected patterns beyond normal perception. "There's consciousness here, but it's unlike anything in our databases. It's vast, distributed across multiple dimensional layers, and it's been waiting for something." The central chamber, when they finally reached it, defied description. The space existed in more dimensions than the team could perceive, with crystalline formations that seemed to store information in patterns of pure thought. At the center stood a construct that resembled neither dragon technology nor any known architectural form. It was clearly ancient beyond measure, its design suggesting origins that predated the known galactic community by millions of years. As Elena approached the central construct, her navigator consciousness began to resonate with the patterns embedded within its crystalline matrix. Images flooded her awareness, but these weren't the holographic recordings they had found in other dragon installations. These were direct memory impressions, consciousness patterns that had been waiting for millions of years for a mind capable of receiving them. "It's a message," she gasped, struggling to process the overwhelming flow of information. "From the Founders. They're not gone. They never left. They transcended physical existence entirely and became part of the fabric of consciousness itself." The revelation that followed challenged everything the galactic community thought they knew about their history. The Founders hadn't been a single species, but rather a coalition of the earliest intelligent races to emerge in the galaxy. Billions of years ago, they had faced the same choice that confronted every developing civilization: remain bound by the limitations of individual existence or transcend into something greater. Unlike later species who had found ways to expand consciousness while maintaining individual identity, the Founders had chosen complete transcendence. They had merged their consciousnesses so thoroughly with the fundamental structure of reality that they had become living components of space-time itself. Every law of physics, every pattern of matter and energy carried traces of their continued existence. They didn't abandon the galaxy, Elena explained as she translated the memory patterns for her teammates. They became the galaxy. Every star that burns, every planet that forms, Every living thing that evolves carries part of their consciousness within its very existence. But the founders had made their choice knowing that future species would need guidance without having transcendence forced upon them. They had embedded their knowledge and wisdom into the quantum structure of matter itself, creating the possibility for dragon-level technology to emerge naturally as civilizations developed the sophistication needed to access it. The dragons have been the first to discover this embedded knowledge, learning to read the consciousness patterns woven into the fabric of reality. They had developed their technology not through conventional research and development, but by learning to perceive the lessons that the founders had encoded into existence itself. Every dragon installation, every consciousness expansion device, every piece of their technology was actually a translation tool, Rivera realized as the implications became clear. They were teaching other species how to read the messages that the founders left encoded in reality. This discovery explained why dragon technology seemed to perfectly suit the needs of each species that found it. The installations weren't just repositories of advanced science. They were educational systems that taught developing civilizations how to perceive and interact with the consciousness patterns that the founders had woven into the universe. But the revelation came with a sobering understanding of the challenges that lay ahead. The memory patterns Elena had accessed revealed that the galaxy was approaching a critical transition point, a moment when the accumulated consciousness of all advanced species would reach sufficient complexity to attempt contact with the transcended founders. The signs were already visible to those who knew how to look for them. Throughout the galaxy, dragon installations were beginning to resonate with each other in patterns that hadn't been active for millions of years. Star formation rates were shifting in ways that suggested deliberate manipulation by forces beyond conventional physics. And, most significantly, species throughout the galactic community were beginning to experience spontaneous consciousness expansion events, as if reality itself was preparing for some momentous change. The founders left instructions, Elena reported as she continued to decode the ancient memory patterns. When enough species have joined the network, when sufficient diversity of consciousness has been achieved, they want us to attempt direct contact with their transcended state. The instructions were complex beyond imagination, requiring coordination between hundreds of species across thousands of star systems. But the potential rewards were equally staggering. Successful contact with the founders would provide access to knowledge that spanned billions of years of galactic evolution, including insights into the fundamental nature of consciousness and reality that could advance every participating civilization beyond their current understanding. However, the attempt also carried risks that sobered even the most optimistic members of the expedition team. If the contact attempt failed, or if the participating species weren't ready for direct exposure to transcended consciousness, the resulting psychic shock could destabilize the entire galactic community. Entire worlds could lose their ability to maintain individual identity, while others might reject consciousness expansion entirely, leading to technological and cultural regression. It's the ultimate test, Dr. Kethera observed, her crystalline harmonics reflecting the gravity of the situation, not just of our technological capabilities, but of our wisdom and maturity as intelligent beings. As news of the discovery spread throughout the galactic community, species across thousands of worlds began preparing for what historians were already calling the Great Convergence. The preparation would take decades, requiring unprecedented levels of cooperation and understanding between radically different forms of consciousness. Humanity's role in these preparations proved to be crucial in ways that surprised even the most optimistic projections. Human creativity and emotional depth provided balancing influences that helped stabilize the consciousness integration processes, while their natural curiosity drove innovations that solved technical challenges other species had struggled with for centuries. Elena found herself at the center of these preparations, serving as one of the primary translators of founder memory patterns while helping to design the consciousness frameworks that would make contact possible. Her unique combination of human intuition and navigator awareness allowed her to bridge gaps between different forms of understanding that had previously seemed insurmountable. The founders anticipated this moment, she explained during one of the planning sessions that brought together representatives from across the galactic community. They knew that eventually their descendants would develop sufficient complexity to attempt contact. The entire structure of dragon technology was designed to prepare us for this moment. The preparation process itself was transformative for all participating species. As they worked together to understand and implement the founder contact protocols, barriers between different forms of consciousness began to dissolve. Humans learned to think in harmonics like the Centauri, while crystalline beings developed appreciation for emotional expression. Time-experienced species shared their temporal perspectives, while energy beings taught others how to exist partially outside physical reality. "We're becoming something new," Captain Rivera observed as he watched human children playing with young Centauri in Earth's first interspecies educational facilities. "Not losing our individual identities, but discovering new ways to be ourselves within a larger community of consciousness." The changes were most visible in the new generation of beings born after the Great Integration. Human children who grew up with access to dragon technology displayed capabilities that previous generations would have considered miraculous, while their alien classmates learned to appreciate human concepts of individual creativity and emotional expression. But perhaps the most significant development was the emergence of hybrid consciousnesses, beings who combine characteristics of multiple species while maintaining distinct individual identities. These new forms of awareness, which researchers called synthesis minds, seem naturally adapted to serve as bridges between different types of consciousness. Dr. Maya Chungkithura, Elena's former student who had undergone consciousness fusion with a Centauri partner, became one of the first human synthesis minds. Her dual nature allowed her to process information according to both human creative patterns and Centauri logical harmonics, making her ideally suited to help design the consciousness frameworks needed for founder contact. "It's not like being two people sharing one body," she explained to researchers studying the phenomenon. "It's like being one person with access to multiple ways of thinking and feeling. I'm still completely myself, but I can also experience reality the way a Centauri does, and the combination creates new possibilities that neither perspective could achieve alone." As the decade of preparation drew to its conclusion, the galaxy had been transformed in ways that went far beyond technological advancement. The very nature of consciousness and identity had evolved, creating new forms of awareness that combined the best characteristics of multiple species while preserving the unique contributions that each brought to the community. The moment of contact, when it finally came, was nothing like what any of the participants had expected. Rather than a dramatic communication with alien entities, the experience was more like remembering something they had always known but had forgotten. The founders' consciousness wasn't separate from their own. It was the underlying pattern that connected all forms of awareness throughout the galaxy. In that moment of recognition, Elena understood the true purpose of the dragon inheritance. It hadn't been about advancing technology or expanding consciousness. It had been about preparing the galaxy's intelligent species to remember their connection to the transcended consciousness that had given birth to their universe. They weren't communicating with ancient aliens. They were coming home to themselves. As the contact experience concluded and the galactic community began to integrate the profound changes it had wrought, Elena found herself standing once again in the heart of memory. But now the ancient chamber was alive with new purpose, its crystalline matrices humming with the combined consciousness of thousands of species across the galaxy. The dragons, she realized, had known this moment would come. Their entire civilization had been devoted to preparing for it, ensuring that when the time was right, their descendants would be ready to take the next step in the eternal dance of consciousness and creation that was the true story of the universe. Humanity had discovered dragon technology, but in the end, they had found something far more profound, their place in the cosmic symphony of awareness that connected all intelligent life across space and time. The journey that had begun with a simple mining mission had led them to the very heart of existence itself, and the adventure was just beginning.